Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your Chief Security Fanatic here. It is Sunday and we are doing Breaches of the Week. And once again, I'd like to thank a few people that sent me tips in throughout the week. If you have tips, please send them to me. You'll also get a shout out. So Chris Fallon, Rebecca Rutherford, Craig McHugh, Deepak Gupta, and some others. Guys, thank you very much. If I did not mention your name, I promise I'll do it next week. We're going to dive right in, and we're going to start with Primeira Blue Cross. Now, this is actually an update because they had a breach in 2014, and they are the largest health insurance provider in the Pacific Northwest, and they have just agreed to pay $10.4 million to 30 states following an investigation on their data breach that exposed confidential information on 10 million of their patients. So heads up, if you are with Primeira Blue Cross Blue Shield, your lawyer's getting a lot of money. You're getting about $2. Moving on, let's talk about Penobscot Community Health Center. They are notifying 13,000 patients basically about a data breach. Now, this also is an AMCA data breach, the American Medical Collection Agency, and I've mentioned them a few times over the last month or two. They are basically a massive medical biller that got LabCorp and their competitor Quest in trouble, and now we're starting to see a whole slew of these other organizations coming out. So FYI, if you have anything to do with the Penobscot Community Health Center, heads up, AMCA got you hit as well. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the Shingle Springs Health and Wellness Center. They discovered that their server infrastructure was infected in ransomware on April 7th, which may have compromised protected health information for 21,513 patients. Now, the information that may have been affected is names, health insurance information, provider name, date of service, amount paid or owed, diagnosis codes, addresses, phone numbers, and social security numbers. So if you have anything to do with the Shingle Springs Health and Wellness Center, heads up to you. Moving on, we're going to be bringing you an update here about British Airways. Now, if you recall, in September of 2018, they had a massive data breach that affected an absolute ton of people, and they just got fined 205 million euros or 230 million US. Now, basically, they got 380,000 people or their customers affected by this. So heads up on that. They are paying a fine. Moving on, we were talking about a company called K12 Inc. Now, they basically, they do school software and all of this. They had a company database that included information for at least 19,000 students. And this database was available for basically anybody with an internet connection that could see it. This happened about a week ago. Now, this data came from a virtual education provider, A+ Anywhere, like A+NYware learning system, so Anywhere Learning System, which is a software package used by more than 500 school districts, and students' names, genders, birth dates, school names, and on and on were available. So there you go. If you have anything to do with that in your school district, heads up, you might want to inquire about K12 or Anywhere's learning system. Moving on, we're actually going to be talking about Google, and I found this one to be very, very interesting. Now, you may have read, and I know I did a video on this a couple of days ago, that Google's smart home speaker may have been unintentionally recording conversations among users, basically without their knowledge or their will. Now, obviously, that's an invasion of privacy, and I did a video on that in the greater context of smart home devices and all of that. But Ireland is taking a different approach, and their Data Protection Commission is treating this like a data breach. Now, their spokesperson, Mr. Doyle, said, and I quote, "We received a breach notification from Google on Thursday evening in accordance with the General Data Protection Regulation," that's the GDPR in Europe, "and we are currently assessing the information that we have." And so Google, by virtue of the GDPR, is treating it basically as a data breach, as we should, and Ireland is looking into that. So we may see some massive fines getting hit for Google Smart Home. And quite frankly, if you have one of those smart home devices, just assume it's recording you. Moving on, we're going to be talking about the Department of Maryland's Department of Education. They inappropriately stored personal information on more than 1.4 million students and 230,000 teachers. Now, their audit office basically last week found that the Education Department stored personally identified information in databases in plain text format, meaning they didn't encrypt it or hash it so that anybody could basically read it if they got access to this database. The audit also found the department had not instated sufficient malware protection, nor did it ensure critical systems managed by third parties were protected against security risks. So if you have anything to do with the Maryland Department of Education, meaning one of your kids is there, or you have a teacher friend, or you're a teacher yourself, heads up, they may have just exposed you online. Now, moving on, there are going to be basically these last two things here, I think kind of are combined. Now, I did a video, I want to say 4 or 5 days ago, maybe 3 days, about Tesla. Now, there was a individual in Tesla, his name is Guangxi Chow, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. He was an engineer at Tesla that basically took their entire proprietary autopilot system and uploaded it into his iTunes account. He then quit, and now he works for XPeng Motors, which is the Chinese competitor to Tesla, obviously taking that intellectual property with him. China has sued this individual because obviously that is intellectual property, and Cow basically admitted in court filings that he had in fact taken this. So that's a huge issue. But we had another case of this, because that's a data breach for Tesla. We had another case for a locomotive manufacturer in the United States, currently being unnamed. They had an employee, Zudong Yao, who went by William, and he is in hiding, from what I've read, after stealing a large amount of information from them. Now, they basically hired him in 2014, and U.S. prosecutors are saying within 2 weeks of starting his job, Yao downloaded over 3,000 electronic files containing proprietary and trade secret information relating to the system that operates the manufacturer's locomotives. And so we know that when we are looking at all of the major categories of wealth transfer illegally in terms of hacking, exfiltration, all of that, the number one category is intellectual property leaving the United States and heading to Asia, primarily China. So there are two very serious data breaches of intellectual property, one for Tesla, another for a locomotive manufacturer. And so it begs the question, how many more of these are there out there? That's a serious issue. And so those are your data breaches of the week. Again, thank you everybody that sent tips in. Please send tips in if you know them. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.